More than once I have heard people say that life changes in an instant. We live on such a narrow margin that the slightest breath can cause us to spin out of control. I was 27 and living an ordinary life when I met Kathy. She was a few years older than me and had more adventure in her life. She was an attractive blonde with a quirky personality. I think what I appreciated most was her sense of humor. It was fun, with a touch of cynicism. We became fast friends. For months we remained close, watching each other go through one failed relationship after another. Finally, we thought it was a good idea to look out for each other. It only took 3 dates to take our relationship to the next level. We continued dating for a little over a month when we both came to the conclusion that we just weren't compatible. It wasn't a horrible breakup, just a breakup. 2 weeks later, she called and asked if I would stop by her place. When I came to the door, she greeted me nervously. "Would you please sit down, John? We need to talk." I figured she wanted to try again. Since I still liked her, I was willing to agree if we could go slower this time. But instead, she uttered words that shook me to the core. "I'm pregnant." And life went into a spiral. But you said you couldn't get pregnant," said I, stunned. We weren't using birth control because neither of us were promiscuous, and she had a medical condition that prevented pregnancy. Her doctor said she couldn't get pregnant even if she underwent treatment. I know what my doctor said, but I am pregnant. There was no one else, it's yours. What do we do? Her head was spinning. The thought flashed through my mind that maybe she would get an abortion so I could absolve myself of responsibility. I immediately felt ashamed. I had always wanted children, and there was no way I could ask for something like that. Fortunately, she couldn't either. We talked for weeks about what to do. Eventually, we agreed to do everything we could to make things work between us. We went through months of couples counseling, and I moved in with her to help and care for her. Soon after, Danielle was born, and I couldn't have been happier. She was perfect. Because the doctors performed a C-section, she was born the way she would look throughout her childhood. In her pictures from 3 months to 7 years old, she looked like the same person, only bigger. The first 6 months were the happiest of my life. I had never been around babies, so I didn't know what to expect. They depend on you for everything: food, protection, comfort, and affection. She looked at me like I was her whole world. Love isn't talked about or planned, it's just a given. The bond we created was much stronger than I could have imagined. Unfortunately, her mom and I weren't so lucky. It turned out that our initial decision to break up was the right one. There was no hope for us. Too different, too stubborn, and painfully unhappy with each other. After helping her raise Danielle for 6 months, she asked me to move out, and I was relieved. I lamented that I was leaving my baby girl behind, that I would no longer be putting her to bed and popping in for a kiss on the top of her head in the middle of the night, but she was right. It was time to leave. The situation was tense, but we managed to get along well enough until we had to go to court. Once the lawyers got involved, we went from not liking each other to actively hating each other. It didn't happen overnight, but in a depressingly short period of time. I don't know if it was the stress of not being in control of our own destiny or just the need to negotiate through third parties, but neither of us stayed on the winning side. We argued, threatened each other, and each of us was consumed with wondering what the other would do next to mess up. Sometimes I thought I was losing my mind. I disagreed with most of the things she did, from kindergarten to her date nights. We even used our daughter as a weapon against each other. To this day, the pain of that is as clear in my mind as any other memory. I went through 3 years of living from week to week and waiting for my time with Danny. We did everything she could have wished for. I tried not to spoil her, but I wanted to experience everything through her eyes. Truth be told, I was also a little afraid that she wouldn't have the same memories with me as she did with her mother. One of the biggest downsides of being a single dad is the jealousy you feel for the other parent. Right after she turned 4, I met Jenny. It was pure luck. I had a small company that was in the business of coordinating private parties. We did event planning, entertainment, and catering. It didn't make me rich, but it was a fun job and I enjoyed it. I hosted a corporate dinner party for a friend named Kathy. During the party, she introduced me to her daughter Jenny, who had just flown in from New York. Jenny was 25 years old and had been dancing professionally for almost 10 years. Unfortunately, she told me, She had had to give it up due to a series of injuries that had required her to undergo several knee surgeries, making any kind of dance career impossible. She came to spend time with her mom while she decides what to do with her life. I found that we had a lot in common. Communicating with her was like communicating with someone I had known for years. However, while I found her very attractive, I also believed in the axiom that clients' daughters are not to be trifled with, so I settled for small talk. I was usually nervous around women I was so attracted to, but apparently the feeling that nothing could happen allowed me to relax and be myself. We talked for over an hour, and I was mesmerized. At the end of the evening, I felt regret when I had to go home alone. 2 days later, my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number and hoped it might be a potential client. "Hello," I said pleasantly. "Hi, this is Jenny. I was wondering if you were busy today. I don't know anyone here, but I'd like to see the town. Would you mind showing me around the city?" I tried to sound nonchalant, but I probably wasn't succeeding. My stomach was making circular motions. "Sure, I'd love to. What do you want to do?" "Surprise me." Dangerously bold for someone in my business, I grinned. As soon as I hung up the phone, the wheels started turning. Working in the entertainment business, I had made some great contacts around town. I made a few calls and came up with what I thought was the perfect date. When I arrived at her mom's house to pick her up, I was overwhelmed. She was beautiful at the party, but I had underestimated her beauty. When she was dressed up to go out on the town, she was just an angel. Long, curly black hair, brown eyes, beautiful lips that curved at the ends and a hint of a smirk, and freckles. I'm not saying she had to be a model. Rather, she was as attractive as the girl from the neighbor's yard. She was the most beautiful woman I'd ever dated. We went to the art museum, then to the ballet. It must have amused her. I know nothing about art and even less about ballet, so she spent most of the date explaining it to me. I wasn't sure if this fascinated or annoyed me, but she seemed to enjoy educating me about culture. The ballet was particularly wonderful. She watched everything intently, her eyes sparkling. I thought about how much she must have wanted to be in the troupe. I watched her face as the performance progressed. At times she seemed very emotional, making me wonder what it would be like to be great at what you do, but be forced to give it up. I had an overwhelming urge to hug her. Not in a calculated way, but just to comfort her. Instead, I decided to take her hand. After the play, we went out to dinner. It was the kind of restaurant I couldn't normally afford. Fortunately, bartering had become a part of my life, and I found that I was quite talented at it. All I had to do was promise to do a favor for the manager, and voila. Dinner suddenly became very affordable. Over the course of the dinner, I discovered that she turned out to be even better company than I had initially thought. She was smart, had a razor-sharp mind, and a wicked sense of humor. Our conversation moved seamlessly from politics to her favorite game shows. When I started talking to her about my daughter, she listened eagerly and asked many questions. This really impressed me because most people just nod and patiently try to humor you despite having no real interest. We ended the date by making out in the front seat of my car like teenagers. She had the softest lips I had ever kissed. I tried to keep the situation under control, not wanting her to think it was just physical pleasure for me. When we finally said goodnight to each other, I drove home wondering what I could do to top that. Turns out I didn't need to bother. Jenny was just as comfortable going out to eat pizza and listen to a band as she was socializing with the rich and famous. I was relieved because that lifestyle didn't interest me. I prefer hamburgers. Steak and lobster is cool, but trying to pretend to be something you're not is a bad way to start a relationship. After a couple weeks and half a dozen dates, we went out to dinner and dancing. I'd been dreading this since the very first date. I'm definitely not Fred Astaire, and I was afraid she would look at me on the dance floor and change her opinion of me. That quickly ceased to be a problem. She was so graceful that I didn't feel like a complete fool. We twirled around the dance floor like we'd been doing it for years. Probably every man in the bar was jealous of me. She looked amazing and her moves were breathtaking. I've always loved talented women. Musicians, artists, and especially dancers have always had a different effect on me than most women. There is an elegance in their movements that goes far beyond sensuality. As the evening went on, I derived almost as much pleasure from watching Jenny dance as I did from dancing with her. I felt an uneasy feeling in my gut, and realized I was falling in love with her faster than I thought. After that, we drove to my house. Next chapter. From that night on, we dated exclusively and very seriously. A few weeks later, I was anxiously preparing my daughter to meet Jenny. As much as I liked her, there was no future for us if she and Danny didn't fall in love quickly. My daughter was my life, and I made no secret of that. Thankfully, it didn't become a problem. It took about 5 minutes to realize how well they had hit it off. Jenny liked to run her fingers through Danielle's hair while they talked. I could see that my daughter really enjoyed her caresses and the way Jenny read to her as if she had been doing it all her life. Before the evening was over, she even showed Danielle how a ballerina dances. It was absolutely marvelous. I was sure that Jenny already had a crush on me, and I had no doubt that I had the same feelings for her. The way she acted with Danielle only made my feelings for her stronger. At the end of the evening, she said goodbye and left, giving each of us a hug. I took Danny upstairs to get her ready for bed. When I finished reading her a bedtime story, she had a very serious look on her face. "Daddy, are you going to marry Jenny?" I smiled and replied, "I hope so, honey." "Good," she replied enthusiastically. "Life can be wonderful." Next chapter. 4 months had passed when I got a phone call. It was Kathy, and I realized she had been crying. She simply said, "We need to talk." I didn't like her tone, and I left the house without realizing to ask if she meant that we needed to talk immediately. When I arrived at her house, she informed me that she wasn't feeling well. She went to her doctor and the test results came back in the morning. Pituitary cancer, advanced stage, no cure. I was speechless. Over the last year, our relationship has improved somewhat. She and I stopped arguing so often, which helped us stop questioning each other's motives. Once that happened, the hatred of our past faded away. Now it was easy for me to let go of my negative feelings, realizing that my daughter was going to lose her mother. "I don't know what to say," I stammered. "I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do?" "Yes, you have to take Danielle now. I'll be too sick to take care of her soon, and she needs to get used to having you around all the time. She's all I'm leaving behind, and I want her to be happy." I just nodded my head and tears came to my eyes. 3 months later, she was gone. Danielle was devastated. She couldn't understand why, and I couldn't explain it. It was months before she was back to her old self. I felt so helpless. Jenny understood Danielle's situation and spent as much time with her as possible. They became very close, and I could tell there was a bond between them that eased my daughter's pain. I don't know how I would have gotten through that time without her help. I waited 6 months to propose out of respect for my daughter. I was afraid she would think I was trying to replace her mom. When I was finally convinced that the time was right, I asked Danny first to make sure there wouldn't be any problems. She seemed very excited about it and was looking forward to something positive. The first thing to do was to buy a ring. I know that nowadays men are supposed to let the woman pick out the ring so she can get exactly what she wants, but I'm old-fashioned. I wanted to surprise her with a ring, and I wanted her to like it. Early on in our relationship, I learned that Jenny had a thing for yellow roses. She couldn't get enough of them. For months, I surprised her with bouquets, figurines, and even a professional painting done by a friend. Surprisingly, she never tired of these gestures. It became a kind of game between us. I had to find new ways to surprise her. I approached an artist I had worked with in the past and asked him to design something we both thought was exceptional. I had the number of a jeweler who owned his own store. When he had gotten married a few years earlier, I had to step in at the last second and fix a mess that another company had made. He was so happy that he promised to do his best to make it up to me. After telling me about my options, he agreed to lower the price so I could afford it. He beat me up for future favors, but it all worked out. Next, a plan had to be devised. I thought about a public proposal, but couldn't figure out how to do it right, so I decided it was best to do it in private. I wanted to get Danielle involved somehow. I've read that children sometimes feel helpless when their parents remarry. Since they have no say in the decision, they may resent their spouse. I decided to ask her to help because I thought Jenny would enjoy it and to make her feel more involved in the process. She was very happy to be my co-conspirator. I invited Jenny to a concert by a pianist who was touring the States. He was only in town for one night, and I was able to get very good seats. It was an amazing experience for both of us. When we got home, We caught a candlelight dinner consisting of smoked salmon from her favorite seafood restaurant and a huge array of side dishes handpicked by a great local chef. Jenny seemed delighted with everything. We ate and talked until we could finish another bite. I excused myself for a moment and found Danielle upstairs with Tammy, the neighbor's daughter who sometimes looked after her for me. I told her it was time for Danny to help me and she could go home. Tammy smiled happily and wished me luck. I took a very excited Danielle downstairs to the dining room. Jenny jumped up to give her a hug and started telling her the details of our wonderful night. I distracted her for a moment and winked at Danny. She pulled a small box out of her pocket. "Jenny," she said shyly, "Daddy and I wanted you to have this." I glowed with pride. She had said it perfectly, exactly the way we had practiced it. Jenny's hands shook as she took the box from Danielle's hands. She opened it and revealed a ring that a man like me shouldn't have been able to afford. A sterling silver ring with a dainty finish and a stem running all the way down to a beautiful yellow rose, with the biggest diamond I could afford on top. I took it out of the case and put it on her finger. "Jenny, will you marry me?" She shouted, "Yes," hugging me. Daniel grabbed her leg, demanding that she not leave his side. And I was so happy that everything had gone according to plan. And I was even happier that I had the foresight to set up a video camera on the refrigerator to capture everything that happened. Next chapter. We had an amazing honeymoon. Her mom watched Danny for a whole week while we flew to New York. She introduced me to all her old friends and made me feel like royalty. We stayed at a great hotel. By the end of the week, I was excited to get home where I could get some rest. When we got back, we got into a familiar rhythm. Jenny got a job as a secretary for a construction company. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid well, and her work schedule allowed her to spend a lot of time with me and Danny. Things were going our way, and we didn't have to work at it. We had a lot of common interests, so it was rare for either of us to have to talk the other into doing something. We had special dates, so each of us could try something new. The rules were that the one who made the date could do whatever he wanted, and the other had to agree and not complain. If the date didn't like it, it didn't have to be repeated, but you couldn't refuse without at least trying it. Her dates were very interesting. She knew how to have a great time doing something unexpected. I don't know how much she enjoyed my outings, but she was always on top of things and made me feel like it was important to her. Being a guy, I probably underestimated her influence. It was uncomfortable for me, but I think she felt it more deeply. She may have even feared we were drifting apart, but she never said anything to me. When we tried to talk about it, nothing worked. We both tried to work things out, but something kept getting in the way. A few weeks before our anniversary, she got a call from her friend Megan. She was one of Jenny's friends from New York that I had met on our honeymoon. Megan had moved to the city after our first anniversary, and they immediately resumed their close friendship. I never really liked her because it gave the impression that I wasn't welcome when they went out. It wasn't bad enough to complain about it to Jenny, but we didn't seem to hit it off at all. I took it as an opportunity to give Jenny a piece of her old life. She could do things with Megan, and it left me time to do things just for myself. I also liked the opportunity to be alone with Danielle. She was so close to her stepmother that I was glad for the opportunity to be alone with her. One of Megan's oldest friends was getting married in New Orleans. Since she didn't have a boyfriend to take along, she asked if Jenny wanted to go. I had no objections and they planned the trip, leaving late Thursday night and returning late Sunday night. After she left, I was surprised at how empty the bed felt for the first time in 2 years. Jenny hadn't called me all weekend, which seemed unusual for her. I wasn't too worried about it, as I knew Sunday afternoon would be busy with a rehearsal dinner, a bachelorette party, and then a wedding. There was also a lot of shopping planned for women who hadn't been together in years. I thought about calling her to say hello, but I didn't want to intrude. I realized that the 3 days without her had taken a big toll on me. I really missed her, despite the problems of the past few months. In the 3 years I had known her, we had done everything together. By Sunday morning, I couldn't wait to see her again. I was determined to find a way to make things right immediately, no matter what. Although I wasn't worried about our breakup, I could feel it eating away at her. I vowed to make it my priority to ease her worries. Next to Danielle, I loved Jenny more than anything and just wanted her to be happy. Early Sunday morning, I received a text from her that she was taking an earlier flight. Instead of coming home around midnight, she would be back at 7. I didn't get a chance to talk to her because the call came in when Danny and I weren't home. We decided to have a big surprise for her. We decorated the whole living room and bought a cake. I left Danny with the babysitter and went to the airport. Jen called me on my cell phone and said she would be waiting for me at one of the terminals. When I saw her in front of the entrance, I had to do a double take. She looked terrible. Her hair was a mess. She looked tired, and her eyes were red and puffy like she had been crying. I stopped the car and jumped out, very concerned. Without saying a word, she ran up to me and hugged me tightly, starting to cry again. I pushed her away gently so I could look at her face. "Jenny, what's wrong?" She stopped and looked down. After a moment, she muttered, "Megan and I had a terrible fight. I came back alone. The whole weekend was a disaster." I saw her shrug, trying to stop crying. I knew we had to get out of there before I got picked up by a tow truck, so I directed her to the car. I threw her bags in the back seat and pulled onto the highway. She snuggled up against me, and I could still feel her crying softly on my shoulder. I reached the fast food restaurant and pulled into the parking lot. I turned her toward me. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" "No, I don't want to talk about it. Please, can we just go home?" I wanted to help, but I didn't want to push her into talking if she wasn't ready. "Well, we can if you want, but Danny is expecting us with a surprise for you. If you show up looking like this, I'm afraid she'll be very disappointed. We've been working on it all day for you." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Without another word, she put her arms around my neck and pulled me tightly to her. "Can we just sit here for a minute? I've missed you so much. I promise I'll get myself together and we can leave. I just want you to hold me. I love you more than anything in the world." She kissed my cheek gently and leaned her head against my shoulder again. I was sad that her holiday had been ruined, but to her credit, she pulled herself together. We got home and she was properly surprised by the work Danny and I had done. All three of us spent the rest of the night cuddling and talking. It was low-key, but we were so happy to have her back that it didn't matter. After we put Danielle to bed, I was hoping to find a way to get Jenny in a better mood, but she was exhausted. She went straight to bed and asked me to take her in my arms. The fight with Megan must have been really hard. As she fell asleep in my arms, I felt that a mistake had crept back into my plan to solve our problems. It turned out to be just the opposite. Jenny was very depressed all week, but returned the following weekend. That seemed to be the end of our problems. For the next 6 months, everything was fine, and she was the perfect wife. For my part, I tried my best to make her feel as loved as I did. Our care for each other put all the troubles behind us, and we found our rhythm of life again. Next chapter. Now you are saying to yourself, "Everything is perfect, so how did you get here?" Well, that's easy. I'm a pervert. Don't get me wrong, I'm not into anything disgusting. I don't enjoy looking at sick pictures. It's just that even though I have a wonderful wife who fulfills all my fantasies, I like to check out these sites from time to time. It's harmless, and I figured I'd rather look at a pretty girl every now and then than fantasize about someone I know. The fantasies seemed like something that would undermine my marriage. One Friday night, almost 6 months after our second anniversary, Jenny took Danny out to a movie. While they were gone, I fiddled with my computer. I checked my email and saw a new message. It simply said, "Best video from the party." At first I thought it was spam, but the address was from a Hotmail account, and I opened the message. Instead of a link or an advertisement, it said, "John, I know you like this kind of thing. It's one of those you'll never believe," and included the URL. I was puzzled. Who the hell would send me a message like that? They knew me well enough to know what sites I liked, but I had no idea who that address belonged to. I decided to check it out. A site popped up that advertised great videos of women. There were 3 sample videos. I downloaded the first one and it turned out to be pretty typical. Then I clicked on the next one. I waited 5, maybe 10 seconds, and then the video opened. It lasted about 45 seconds. At about the 20th second, the focus was on an attractive man who looked like a student. He was having fun with some unbelievable brunette and another woman. "Son of a bitch," said I, shocked. It was Jenny's friend, Megan. She was beautiful, with long blonde hair. I couldn't see anything else because the woman in front of her was in the way. "Shit," I muttered. I wasn't sure if I should enjoy it or not. Although she was beautiful, it was still one of Jenny's friends. An image like that could lead to bad things. Suddenly, the cameraman approached the trio from the side, and my world came crashing down. "Jenny!" I exclaimed, feeling like I was about to pass out. Life is a hateful, vindictive bitch. I had never dreamed of feeling so many emotions at once. I was angry, jealous, crushed, and feeling 100 other emotions I couldn't even define. I needed to be sure, so I clicked on the link again. It opened to the same thing as before. When the operator stepped aside, my wife was there. No. With trembling hands, I pulled out my credit card and bought a 30-day trial. It took a minute to find the full video, but I did. I recognized the room from the sample. I watched it, feeling myself getting quite sick. When the video ended, I checked to see if there were any other videos from the party and then tried to gather my thoughts. I looked at the file. It had the date, 10/23/04. I looked at the calendar on my computer and verified that it was the weekend Jenny was leaving for New Orleans. I sat like that for at least 15 minutes, staring at the screen. I had never felt so lost in my life. I heard the sound of a car in the driveway and jumped up to look out the window. It was the girls. The fact that Jenny was out of the car, laughing and oblivious to the people around her, struck me to the core. Anger was replaced by sadness, and my whole body shook with adrenaline. I quickly went back to the computer and started the video again. I fast-forwarded it to about where I saw the action and was rewarded with just the right moment. I pressed pause and went into the living room. They walked in there laughing. Danielle ran up to me and jumped into my arms. I hugged her tightly, knowing that I was about to shatter her world, possibly forever. She sensed something because she immediately asked what was wrong. I couldn't look at her face as I firmly told her to go upstairs to her room and close the door. She looked upset but obeyed me. Jenny was very disturbed. She probably thought there had been a death in the family or something. I didn't say a word but went back into the study. She followed me, demanding, "John, are you going to tell me what the hell is going on?" When we got to the computer, I grabbed her by the shoulders with both hands and turned her to face the computer. I took no pleasure in watching all the color disappear from her face as she saw the perfect freeze frame. For a few moments, she didn't react in any way. I saw her shoulders twitch a few times before I could hear her sob. She said quietly without turning around, "John, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I tried to hold back my rapidly rising anger. It was just a one-time thing? I already knew the answer. She looked at the floor. "No, it happened the night before. Then another time at the party." "With Megan and the stripper?" She nodded, not taking her eyes off her feet. "What about the next day? Whose bed did you sleep in after the party?" It was only a guess, but I was sure it was correct. She didn't answer me, only sobbed louder. "Well, this is just awesome. I bring you into my house, I tell my daughter to trust you, and you turn out to be this?" I hissed, pointing at the screen. "Was that a good thing? Was it worth ruining our marriage?" She sobbed even louder, but still didn't look at me. It didn't matter. My anger was out of control, and I was in no mood to feel pity. "This is how it's going to be, you good-for-nothing whore. You have 5 minutes to pack your things and get out of my house. When 5 minutes and 1 second have passed, if you don't walk out the door, this video will be sent to your family, then your friends, then your work. Once you leave, you will never be able to contact me again. Our lawyers will handle everything." I saw her flinch, taking each word as a blow. Between sobs, I heard, "What about Danielle?" That broke the dam. "Don't you ever say my daughter's name again, you whore," I shouted. "When you leave, I'll tell her as best I can what a piece of trash you really are. You chose your party friends over us. Don't ever mess with her again or I'll get a restraining order and arrest you." Finally, she turned to me with an expression of deep pain. "You can't do that. She's like my own daughter. I helped raise her." I was already thinking about it. "Well, since we never finalized the adoption papers, you don't have any goddamn rights at all." I knew I was talking too loud, but I couldn't stop. "Please don't do this to me, to us. I'm begging you to give me a chance to explain. It's been 6 months, and I've done everything I can to make it up to you." I had finally gotten to the point where I couldn't stay so angry and began to calm down little by little, allowing me to regain control of myself. "So, since you've been lying to me for 6 months, and I only found out about it now, I'm supposed to give you an indulgence?" How would I know how often it happened? Why would I even trust a lying whore? Even if I did trust you, I don't care. You made your choice. Then I started counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Please, John, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to get another chance. Please don't do this. 10, 11, 12. I was starting to feel like she wasn't taking me seriously, so I sat down at the computer and opened my email account. I sent a new message to both of her parents and Nicole's sister, then typed in the message box, "The truth about your daughter." Finally, I clicked the button. I didn't even look over my shoulder as I continued to count. 22, 23. With a frustrated exclamation, she ran out of the room and ran upstairs. I waited a moment so I wouldn't snap, then followed her. I stopped at the top of the stairs, just a little ways away, and listened to her frantically packing. I checked my watch and saw that there was about 3 minutes left. And then I heard something that made my heart skip a beat. "Jenny, where are you going?" Danielle came out of her room and saw her stepmother panicking and packing, crying loudly. "I'm sorry, baby. I have to go to Aunt Nicole's house for a little while. I did something really bad and hurt your daddy. It's all my fault, not his." And I thought I had reached the limit of the pain I could feel until I heard Danny say through her tears, "Did you say you were sorry? If you say you're sorry, he'll have to forgive you. Please don't go." My anger completely gone, I sank to the floor and openly cried. I had completely forgotten about the clock. Jenny spoke again. "It's too late. I'm sorry, but sometimes adults do such horrible things that just saying sorry isn't enough." Danny didn't give up. "But I don't want you to leave. Don't you love me anymore?" I was even proud when Jenny dropped the suitcase and stopped crying for a moment, worrying only about Danielle. "I love you more than anything in the world. I love you so much." And she spread her arms out to the sides. "I have to go now, but you be brave. Maybe someday your dad will forgive me. But you always remember that it's my fault, not his. He loves you more than anything in the world. I wish I could explain everything, but I have to go." Unable to bear it any longer, I stumbled to the bottom of the stairs and shouted, 441, 42, 43. I heard another hurried conversation, and then the sound of someone coming down the stairs quickly. Jenny walked past me, then stopped and turned around. "John, I don't blame you for this. I know I deserved it. I'm so sorry I hurt you. I will love you forever." 4:55, 56. She turned and rushed to the door. When it closed behind her, I climbed the stairs to comfort my little angel. I couldn't even focus on the pain I felt. I knew my act had ripped the heart out of my little girl. Being angry at Jenny wasn't helping me deal with the self-injury. I ran up the stairs to try to fix what couldn't be fixed. Life went into a spiral. Part 2. "Hey, John." "Oh, shit. What happened to you?" The next day, I stopped by my best friend's house. Luckily, Steve and Sharon were home. I was so knocked out that I didn't even think about the fact that they might not be there. I just got Danielle into the car and drove off. Steve obviously noticed my state of mind. I threw him a warning glance and looked at Danny. Although I could see the puzzled look on his face, he caught my meaning. He knelt down in front of her and held out his hands. "How are you, young lady?" She threw herself into his arms, crying, "Jenny's gone." Steve looked at me, shocked. He started to say something, but I stopped him, quickly shaking my head in denial. When she calmed down a bit, he suggested she go upstairs and see Tyler. He was Steve's son and was a little younger than Danielle. They had been best friends since her mom died. When she was out of sight, I tried to speak, but this time he pushed me away. He turned and walked out of the room. A few seconds later, he returned with Sharon, who looked very worried. We sat down across from each other and she spoke first. "John, you look terrible. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "Jenny's gone. I told her to leave last night." "What?" the two of them replied in amazement. I thought I had decided how to explain everything, but I couldn't remember a word of what I had rehearsed. "She cheated on me. I found out last night." I put my head down on my hands, trying to get my emotions under control. This was definitely a lost battle. Sharon recovered enough to ask, "Are you sure? I just can't believe it. I know she loves you and Danny more than anything." I considered telling them everything, but decided it would hurt too much. Plus, it would be really embarrassing for them since they've been friends with Jenny since we started dating. As angry as I was, I didn't expect them to hate her as well. I decided to be vague. I don't want to talk about specifics, but yes, I'm sure. There were pictures, and she admitted it herself. I don't know if it was an affair or not, it just happened about 6 months ago. There may have been other instances. I can't imagine her doing something so bad on a whim. It's more likely that it's been going on for a long time. The phone rang, cutting off further conversation. Sharon grabbed it and started talking. Steve asked me a few quiet questions, but didn't seem to want to discuss anything important without Sharon's input. She took the phone into the kitchen so I couldn't make out what she was saying. She came back into the room, carrying her coat. That was Nicole. She said Jenny is in a terrible state and needs my help. John, would you mind if I went? Nicole was very upset, and I think I should try to help if I can. And I didn't realize what her presence would accomplish, so I just shrugged. She looked at me intently. I love you both and would like to help if I can. Is there anything you want me to say about you or Danielle? I looked at her determinedly. I can't control what you and Steve do or say to her. It's none of my business. But I want to make it clear that she is not welcome in our lives. Anything I say to the two of you stays between the two of us. If you feel it makes you uncomfortable, let me know. They both looked at me in surprise. I don't think they realized the depth of her deception or my determination. It was hard not to be completely honest with them, but I was sure they would rather not know. Sharon kissed Steve and left. For the next few hours, we didn't talk about anything important. Since the kids were entertaining themselves, we watched a basketball game. It seemed like nothing, but at that moment I thought it could be anything. Around 7 o'clock, Sharon returned. Wasting no time, she informed me that I was in trouble. John, please tell me that's not true. Steve looked surprised. Honey, what's wrong? Sharon kept her eyes on me. John? What was I supposed to do, Sharon? Apologize for not being man enough to make her happy? I said it sarcastically, and immediately realized it was a big mistake. That's enough, John, said Steve angrily. You need to calm down. Turning to Sharon, he asked, Honey, what's going on? It was awful. Jenny was hysterical. She said John didn't just kick her out. He told her he wouldn't talk to her anymore and would get a restraining order so she couldn't go near Danielle. He then told her she had 5 minutes to pack her bags and leave, or he would send out pictures to her family and work. She turned to me again. She said you were sitting there counting out loud even when she had to say goodbye to Danny. John, I'll believe you. If you say you didn't do that, you've never lied to me. Is this some kind of misunderstanding? She stopped and looked at me hopefully. Steve remained silent as I tried to justify myself. I didn't want her in my house anymore. She's dangerous and shouldn't be around my daughter. I don't know what I should have done differently. Sharon seemed indecisive. Obviously, Jenny hadn't told her everything. I'm not sure what's going on, but you haven't seen her. She's devastated. We had to ask her doctor for a prescription for something, so she can get some rest. John, she loves you and is very sorry for what she did. I understand that you're angry, but why did you have to be so cruel? We've known each other for years. This isn't you. I suddenly felt more tired than angry. Look, I don't know what's right anymore. Sharon, I'm sorry I jumped on you. I didn't mean anything by it. I'm tired. We should get going. I really appreciate you guys putting up with me all day. I know it helped Danny being here. I called Danielle and we left. When I got to the door, Sharon stopped me and gave me a big hug. She whispered in my ear, I don't know what to think about what you did, but I hope you change your mind. She looked down at Danielle. For the sake of all of you. I walked away feeling stupid. I should have known that Sharon wouldn't like my reaction to Jenny, but I wasn't thinking straight. I figured if I told her everything, it would make a difference. I spent the next few days with Danielle just trying to recover. I couldn't eat or sleep. The only thing that kept me going was the realization that I had to be there for her. She was so devastated, I couldn't imagine how things could get better. I had a few tense conversations with Jenny's family, but they were surprisingly neutral. No one liked what I had done, but they didn't want to take her side either. A week later, Steve stopped by to see how I was feeling and left me the number of a counselor he highly recommended. I told him I wasn't interested, but he replied that he would beat the drum if I didn't at least call. I realized he was just trying to help and promised to think about it. The more I pondered the idea, the more it made sense. In my current state, I didn't envision anything good for my daughter, so I decided to give it a try, at least once. I managed to get an appointment for Thursday, so I dropped Danny off at Steve's and hit the road. I followed Steve's directions and headed to an office park set back from the road. It was a group of small offices that housed a variety of different businesses. I checked the address a second time and couldn't believe what I saw. Steve had tricked me. The name of the office belonged to a church. I decided to follow through because it couldn't get any worse. As I walked in the door, it was clear that this was a very low-profit organization. It was like what you might do with your garage if you had 20 minutes of free time. A man in his 30s walked into the room and smiled, extending his hand to me. "You must be John, and I'm Brian. Steve has told me a lot about you. I hope I can be of some use to you." I studied him carefully, trying to see if he would give anything away. I wasn't anti-religious, but I wasn't seeking conversion either. I'd gone to church when I was younger, but I'd stopped after college. I no longer remembered why. I knew Steve and Sharon went to church all the time, but they didn't do much more than occasionally ask if Danny and I wanted to go. If Brian was the person Steve recommended so highly, I guess it wouldn't hurt to listen to him. He invited me into his office and we talked. He started out as a licensed counselor, but left that occupation because he felt that too many colleagues were catering to people's narcissism. Brian used his religious background to change his attitude toward counseling. He took a job at a non-denominational church as a youth minister because it allowed him to work with children and also find time to use his skills to help people in need. He now considered himself a counselor who had a good basis for his opinions. I knew he was worth talking to when he told me, "A lot of people just need a good kick in the butt to get their lives together." It didn't sound like the typical psychobabble I feared, but it didn't sound like some kind of appealing speech either. It was honest, straightforward, and utterly charismatic. I thought maybe it was a good idea after all. After we talked about what he thought I could get out of meeting him, he asked for my thoughts. I didn't have any ideas, but I promised to keep an open mind. I just wanted to deal with what Jenny had done so I could keep my sanity and not make things worse for Danielle. He listened intently to everything I told him. When I tried to talk about what I had seen at the party, he politely stopped me. He wanted to know about me before I met her, about our dates and my opinion of our married life. I even told him some details about our life, the lighter ones, and he didn't seem shocked or even surprised. After an hour of talking about all the good stuff, I felt much better. Brian informed me that he had to go to church for business, but he would like to see me again if that was okay with me. He reminded me that this was not real therapy, and I should not consider his advice as anything more than what I could get from talking to a priest or rabbi. He advised me to seek professional therapy, if that's what I wanted. I let him know that I wasn't interested in that right now, and as a single dad who had just lost half the family income, I couldn't afford it either. Brian assured me that his sessions would be free, but unlike seeing a professional, he would have conditions that I would have to agree to if I wanted to continue. He said we could discuss it later when I had a better understanding of what I wanted. I headed home feeling almost like myself. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before things were back to normal. I drove home to grab something for Steve that I forgot to bring with me when I dropped Danny off. As I pulled up to the house, I saw Jenny's sister Nicole waiting for me on the porch. I really didn't feel like talking to her right now. Not only was I afraid of ruining the first good mood I'd had since I'd kicked Jenny out, but I genuinely liked Nicole. I didn't want to get into a confrontation with someone who had never treated me with anything other than kindness. "We need to talk." It was simple, straight to the point, and I knew she wasn't going anywhere until I listened to her, so I invited her in. Jenny's not happy. She hasn't been herself since she walked in the door. She cries all the time, she won't eat, and I'm worried about what she's thinking. She took a 2-week family leave at work, but I don't believe she's going back. She told me what you found out, and I understand your anger. She paused before continuing. But this punishment of yours is too much. Taking Danielle away is cruel. Why would you do something like that? You should at least give her a chance to explain what happened. Even if you still want to divorce her, please let her tell you her side of the story. Do it for her sake, for Danielle's sake, for your own sake, or for whatever the hell makes you happy, but I'm begging you to talk to her. I thought long and hard about it. Part of me wanted to try to understand, But part of me was afraid to find out more than I already knew. I knew she had done something the night before and the night after the video. I didn't know if I could handle the truth. I just can't right now. I'm sorry, but I'm still so angry that if I see her, Friday night could happen again. I know what I did was cruel, maybe too cruel, but the deed is done. I don't trust her around my daughter and I don't want to be in the same room with her. I know you're in a difficult position being in the middle of all this, but my answer is no. Nicole looked at me sadly. For a second I thought she was looking at me with pity, not sadness for her sister. But it didn't make any sense, so I decided it was just my imagination. She walked away with a quick hug, which caught me off guard. I braced myself for screaming and swearing. Nothing had made sense since I'd seen the video, and that just added to the weirdness. The next 2 weeks went by without too many surprises. I had a normal conversation with Jenny's mom and assured her that she could see Danielle anytime she wanted. The only stipulation was that Jenny not be allowed to see her. I reminded her that Danielle wouldn't lie to me, and I would know if they went behind my back. I sincerely hoped it wouldn't come to that. My daughter had already been deprived of too much. I continued my weekly meetings with Brian. The fourth meeting was a turning point. Our first meeting was very constructive for me. I left feeling better, but there was no way to maintain that state. Our subsequent meetings were similar to the first. I came in expecting the conversation to be similar. Brian wasted no time. "John, do you remember our first conversation?" I wasn't sure exactly what part he was referring to, so I simply answered yes. "I let you talk for 3 weeks without a break. It confirmed my initial observations that you are indeed a good man and a good father. The problem is that you don't see the truth." He paused to let her comprehend what he had said. "This will be a time when you will need to remember that I am a preacher and will not always speak to you the way a professional counselor would. When I showed that I understood," he continued, "a terrible thing has happened to you and your family. Now you have to make a real decision about what comes next in your life. Will you be a victim and wander aimlessly, or will you step forward and become a man?" Wow, that was something I hadn't expected. "What exactly are you suggesting, Brian?" "First, you need to find out why this happened to you. Then you need to decide what to do about it. Third," he paused again, looking at me firmly, "you need to apologize to your wife. If it weren't for the shock that statement caused me, I probably would have burst out." Instead, I stared at him dumbly, wondering if this was a joke. "I'm not joking, John. If you want to recover from this, you need to realize how wrong you were and what it cost you." "What did it cost me?" "My wife's behavior cost me my marriage. My daughter is a wreck. Her family can barely stand to be around me, and my best friends treat me like I'm sick with the plague. How can you talk to me about cost?" See, this is the sacrifice I was talking about. Your choices caused all of the things you just described. You made a decision, and you are living with the consequences. I'm sitting here listening to you talk about how great your life was, and then one event leads to the complete collapse of everything. My anger began to build. "So what are you suggesting? I'm wrong to be upset because she cheated on me? Not an affair, but a complete betrayal of everything we had. She spent an entire weekend acting like a slut, doing it in public and doing it with an unknown number of men and women." Brian gave me a sarcastic look, but didn't change his tone as he continued. "I never said you shouldn't be upset, nor did I suggest you divorce her. You have every right to do both. I said you need to find out the reasons for her betrayal and ask for forgiveness." His look changed to resemble the way I look at Danielle when she misbehaves. People have such a misconception about forgiveness. It's not easing someone's transgressions, but letting them off the hook. Right now, you are acting as judge, jury, and executioner. You're doing this to someone you still love, and guilt is destroying your life. When he was satisfied that I was really listening and trying to make sense of his words, he continued, "There is a true story about a mother whose son was murdered. She lived in grief for several years until she went to see the man convicted of his murder. After meeting him in prison, she forgave him. The simple act of giving up her hatred allowed her to move on with her life. It didn't make her love him or understand his act. It didn't change his punishment or society's attitude towards him. She just needed to get rid of the pain so she could do something constructive with her life. Think of all the good things you told me about your wife, how much you loved her, and what a positive impact she had on your life. Tell me if I'm wrong. Has this punishment made your life or Danielle's life better? Seeing that I wasn't going to defend myself, he continued, any mental health professional will tell you that holding on to anger is a negative thing. This vendetta you're on can only drag you down into the misery you're experiencing. I like you, and I want you to get better. But I don't believe that will happen unless you acknowledge your fears. I don't want to listen and see you suffer when you have the opportunity to fix things and maybe even overcome. I'd like you to think this through before we talk about another session. I don't know if it would help for us to meet again until you take steps to take control of your life. I also want to suggest that you think about the idea of inviting Jenny to a session. I think it could really help you find a way to deal with your pain. I sat there trying to absorb everything he said. I really enjoyed our sessions, and I believed what he said about encouraging me to do what he thought would help me get better. But I just couldn't get my head around it. I felt very different on the way out than I had in previous sessions. Surprisingly, I wasn't that upset by Brian's statements. I just wasn't sure if and how I was ready to talk to her. I hadn't talked to Jenny since I kicked her out. If I took him at his word that it would help me, how would I ever get over what she had done and ask for her forgiveness? I couldn't even imagine having a session with her. It would be like saying we can fix things, and that was out of the question. I called Steve and asked if they could keep an eye on Danny for the night, and then set off on a very long drive. There were too many memories at home and I needed to think. After a couple hours, I stopped and got a hotel room. I spent most of the night walking around the hotel grounds or sitting in my room. Eventually, I made a decision and managed to get about 2 hours of sleep. Before getting Danny up, I called Nicole. I was answered with a very icy, "Hi." When I asked if we could come over to Jenny's house, it got much warmer. She said they would be home all day. I said she could tell Jenny or leave it as a surprise as she saw fit. On the way out, I told Danielle that we were going to her stepmother's house. And I thought about what I had been told about her not eating and crying all the time and was afraid of how it might affect Danielle, especially after she lost her mother to cancer. I decided to tell Danielle something to soften the impact of Jenny being so depressed. I told her that Jenny had been very sad since I asked her to leave and that Danny should take care of her for the day. That's all you can say to a 7-year-old. She couldn't wait. She solemnly promised to take good care of Jenny, and I knew she would be too busy with her duties to be upset. I was so proud of her. When we arrived, Nicole met me at the door with a hug. "Thank you so much for this. I was so worried about her. I just didn't know what else to do." I warned her, "You know this doesn't change anything between us. I just think it's the right thing to do." I didn't want to mention Brian and his proposal. "This is just the beginning. You need to prepare yourself." She didn't elaborate. "Jenny, we have company." A sigh was heard from across the room, quickly followed by Danielle yelling, "Jenny!" She ran up to her stepmother and lunged at her, nearly knocking Jenny to the ground. I felt my knees go up as I saw how my wife had changed. She was painfully thin. She didn't seem to weigh more than 90 pounds. Her face was pale and gaunt, making her look half dead. There were dark circles under her eyes, indicating that she hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. Her hair was unwashed, she was wearing wrinkled sweatpants, and her gait had a sluggish shuffle to it. I couldn't imagine a more horrifying sight for the only woman I'd ever loved. I watched them hug and cry. Danielle started babbling nonstop, trying to bring Jenny up to speed on the events of the 5 weeks. The scene reminded me of what a shit I was. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Jenny?" She looked up at me. "I need to go out for a few hours. Do you want Danny to stay with you?" I wanted them to have time together, but I didn't want her to feel obligated if she suddenly wasn't ready. She spoke, her voice sounding as thin as her face. "I'd like her to stay, thank you." I apologized and walked out. I had nowhere else to go, but I couldn't stay there any longer. I decided to go home and try to take a little nap. It was a waste of time. I couldn't get the image of Jenny out of my head. How could she do this to herself? I felt betrayed because of her cheating, but I was still living my life. What I saw in Nicole was beyond my expectations. How could someone who thought it was okay to cheat on me be so devastated by the results? When I got back to Nicole's house, she told me that they were painting upstairs. She thanked me again for changing my mind about her sister and Danny. I didn't know what to say back, so I just nodded and mumbled something. I told her that I wanted to send Danny downstairs to talk to Jenny. Nicole promised to watch her. I made my way to the guest room and saw that they were acting exactly the same as before. I swallowed my pride and knocked on the open door. "Daddy," Danny cried, running up to me for a hug. I couldn't help but notice that she looked much happier and calmer than before. Ever since Jenny had left, she had been so wary and it was killing me. I would have given anything to ease her pain. I told her that Nicole needed to talk to her downstairs. She told Jenny she would be right back and gave her a quick kiss before running out of the room. I walked into the room and sat down at the table across from Jenny. "We need to talk, but I'm not sure how to start." She seemed about to say something but changed her mind. "John, I want to thank you for letting Danielle come over. It means a lot to me." I nodded in response and nervously began to speak. "I don't want this to be a one-time event." As she started to speak, I stopped her. "Please let me finish. I want you to see her whenever you want, either at my house or anytime I need a babysitter. However, there are 3 conditions I must ask you to agree to." She didn't say anything, but I could see she was nervous about what I might demand. "The first is that while she is with you, no men must come to her." I could see she was ready to defend herself, so I raised my hand, asking her to let me finish. "I know you'll say you won't do it, but I have to demand it. If any guy, even one of our friends, wants to come over to our place, you have to ask me first. Besides, Megan can never see my daughter, period. If I find out you haven't met that condition, I'll have to stop the visits immediately and there will be no more chances." I paused and let her know she could answer. "There are no other men, John. Even if there were, I would never do anything like this to her. Megan isn't the problem. I haven't talked to her in months." I nodded to show her that I believed what she was saying. I made sure she was done before continuing. "Second, you need to start taking care of yourself." I saw her turn away and blush, so I stood up and took her hand. "I know you've been depressed. Everyone told me how upset you were and I should have listened. Danny will understand how you feel. She needs to know you're okay for her own peace of mind. I'm worried about you too, but don't do it for me. Do it for her. Okay?" She didn't say anything. I felt awkward talking to her like that, but I figured that mentioning how her depression might affect Danielle would be the motivation she needed. Finally, she quietly said she would do it. I took a deep breath to get to the hard part. "Number 3, I need you to forgive me." I felt stupid saying that. I froze for a moment because I couldn't figure out how I was going to explain it to her. "Forgive you for what?" she asked, perplexed. "I'm the one who did everything. It's all my fault." She began to cry, very quietly. I tilted her face toward me, wanting to make it easier for both of us. "I want you to forgive me for intentionally hurting you. What you did crushed me. But no matter what really happened, I know you never meant to hurt me. I remember how upset you were when you came back from New Orleans." I saw her blush at the mention of the trip. "Obviously, you regret what happened. I don't need to know anything else right now. What I did was out of spite. I did it to hurt you, and I tried to make it as painful as possible. I'm ashamed of myself for doing it, and especially for using Danielle to make it worse. I'm sorry." She lowered her gaze to her hands and was silent for a long time. I was beginning to think I'd gone too far when she finally answered. "I should have told you about New Orleans when it happened. It's my fault you found out about it in such a horrible way. You didn't have time to think about it, and you tried to hurt me like I hurt you. I don't blame you for anything. I just wish it hadn't happened. I would give anything to have it all back." She looked at me with such pain that it was hard for me to meet her gaze. "Of course I forgive you." She pulled me to her and kissed my cheek. It was a small gesture to show me her affection without making me respond. As Danny and I walked away, I realized that Brian was right. For the first time since watching the video, I felt like some of the burden had been lifted off my shoulders. Nothing had changed. I was still losing my wife, but now I felt like I was finally a part of the decision. Now I had to fulfill Brian's other requests. I thought about asking Jenny what had happened, but there were a few problems. First, I couldn't know for sure if she was being honest. Second, I might have been too emotional hearing it from her, and I wanted to keep my cool. Third, I wasn't sure if this was the right time to discuss the matter. I didn't want to risk making the situation worse again. I made some phone calls and got the name of a private investigator in New Orleans that I could trust. It turned out to be surprisingly inexpensive. I was expecting something more extravagant. Too much television. He contacted me 2 days later with the stripper's name, address, and job information from the video. His name was David, and he was now working at a law firm. He assured me that the guy would be on the job all next week. Monday morning, I dropped Danny off at Nicole's house, promising to be back on Tuesday. I caught a late morning flight and arrived in New Orleans just after 1 o'clock. I caught a cab and went straight to the law office where David worked. He had found a full-time job as a law clerk while he was finishing law school. The office where he used to work said he quit back in November. I was nervous as I walked through the doors. This was the strangest thing I'd ever done, and I still wasn't sure I wanted to know what he might tell me. I decided that visiting him at work would give me an advantage. It was a large, well-known firm, and I was sure there was no way he wanted to get in trouble there. I had no idea what to expect from him, so I wanted to embarrass him to throw him off balance. I asked for him at the front desk, and they confirmed to me that he was there. I waited about 10 minutes for them to find him. I was glad I didn't have to make up a story about why I wanted to see him. I figured they would assume it was work-related, and that would save me the hassle. I felt my stomach churn as he walked into the lobby. He looked completely different in a shirt and tie, but I would have recognized him anywhere. His face was imprinted in my memory, and I wondered if I'd ever be able to erase it. He greeted me with a handshake and asked me who I worked for. I couldn't help but feel pleased at the change in his face when I told him I was here because he met my wife at his old job. He gestured nervously for me to follow him and led me to a small conference room on the second floor. We stepped inside, and he closed the door behind me. Look, I don't want any trouble. I don't work for them anymore, and I'm sorry if either party causes problems. This job is very important to me, and they can't know about it. He looked very upset. I realized I had done the right thing in meeting with him. David, I'm not here to cause you problems. I'm here for information. If you give me what I want, I'll leave and not bother you again. If, however, you refuse to answer my questions or lie to me, I will have no problem giving you the mother of all nightmares. Believe me, you deserve it. He looked worried. I don't know what information I might have. I worked for them for a few months, and there were a lot of parties. I don't know how I can remember anything specific that might help you. Actually, I began, you first met my wife not at a party. You had a little chat with her friend Megan the night before, and then you met her again at the bachelorette party. His eyes widened and he suddenly looked much more awkward. You're Jenny's husband. It was a statement, not a question. I got the impression he was expecting me. Yes. I have a totally screwed up life because of what happened that weekend, and I'm trying to get something out of it. Nothing makes me more nauseous than the thought of discussing it with you, but I have no other choice. You'll have to believe me when I tell you that I have no problem taking out my frustration on you and your lovely little career. And I could tell he didn't doubt a word of what I was saying. I'll tell you everything you want to know, but not here. You have to come by my house after I get home from work. I'll give you the address. That's okay, I already have it. I wanted him to be a little scared. He was considerably larger than me and more than 10 years younger. The last thing I wanted was a physical confrontation. I just wanted answers, but I needed him to feel that it was in his best interest to cooperate. I left and went to lunch. I arrived at his place at 6 o'clock as we had agreed. When I rang the bell, he answered before I could take my finger off the button. He invited me in and offered me a seat in the living room. Asking if I wanted something to drink, he took a beer and sat down across from me. Before I could speak, he slid a videotape toward me that was already on the coffee table. "Yeah, everything you want to know is on there," he said quietly. I was furious. "You recorded this? Did she know?" "No, she didn't. It's not what you think. I've always recorded private parties. It's for my defense in case there's a problem later. I'm a law student, remember?" I nodded, looking at the plain-looking tape with the name Jenny on the back. It was a pretty smart move, come to think of it. Unfortunately, I realized that as much as it hurt to talk about that weekend, it would undoubtedly be much worse. I felt like I was going to throw up. "Is there anything I need to know that isn't on the tape?" He took a deep breath. "Yes, there's actually a lot you need to know. Megan contacted me a week before they came to town for the wedding. She knew my company would be handling the bachelorette party and asked me to hire me and another guy for a private party the night before. Apparently, someone had recommended me to the bride by name, and she had passed it on to Megan. She told me it was mostly for her friend Jenny. She was trying to help her escape from an abusive asshole. He paused, looking at me intently. Apparently, my reaction was what he expected. You never hit her, did you? I defended myself and was more than a little angry. No, and I never would have. We had a great marriage before her trip. In fact, we had a great marriage for another 6 months after her, until some sick son of a bitch sent me your old company's website address. I looked on the site and found a video of a party with you, her and Megan. That put an end to everything. Surprisingly, he looked disappointed. You two broke up? Well, what did you think? What did you expect when I found out about what she'd been doing those 3 days? You mean 2 days, don't you? He corrected me. Noticing my blank expression, he thought for a second. She didn't tell you about Sunday? Same. We haven't talked about anything. We haven't talked since I found out. He honestly looked concerned. Look, John, I know I'm the last person you want in your business, but you should have talked to her about everything that happened. It wasn't what it seemed. I was stunned. What the hell were we talking about? Not as it seemed? She had fun with you and Megan for 3 days, and you're telling me there's a reason I shouldn't be mad about it? Look, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Well, I just have to stick with what happened. When Jake and I arrived on Friday, your wife was already pretty drunk. Megan sat her down and pretended to be drunk too. The truth is, by Sunday I found out that she had set Jenny up. What do you mean she set her up? She didn't slip or something? David looked at the floor. No, nothing like that. Look, I don't want to talk about it. Just watch the tape and judge for yourself. I'm sure it's going to be horrible for you, but telling you won't make it any better. I don't know why you even took my word for it. I had to admit that he was right about that. I nodded, and he continued. You saw the video from the website, so I can't tell you anything about Saturday that you don't already know. No one told her what was going to happen at the party, or I'm sure she wouldn't have gone there. I think she was so upset Friday night that she let herself get really drunk again. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think Megan worked on her for hours. Eventually, she got Jenny to the point where she couldn't say no anymore. Things get so crazy at these parties. I've seen a lot of women do things I would never do in normal life. I was very surprised at how caring he seemed. I was expecting to see a cynic and an egotist, but was caught off guard by how unhappy he looked. He frowned, losing concentration for a moment. After taking a second to gather his thoughts, he continued. Megan made her dance on stage with the other girls. When Jenny wasn't expecting it, Megan plowed her onto the stage. I think she was too far away to object to anything. That's when I stepped up. He threw me a pained look. I swear to you, if I had known what was going on, I wouldn't have touched her. I was confused. You tell me all this and then claim you didn't know. How am I supposed to believe what you're saying? Because Jenny told me. When did Jenny tell you? On Sunday when she got up. I was finally starting to understand. So she stayed with you Saturday night? He turned away from me again. Yes, but it's not what you think. The reason the camera cut out on the video is because she kind of freaked out in the middle and ran out of the room. I was really worried, but Megan said it was no big deal. She said you called and yelled at her because you weren't home on Saturday and it upset her. It was stupid of me not to notice that there was something else going on, but I figured a guy who beats his wife. I guess I didn't question it because I thought it was cool to help someone like her get away from a jerk. Megan paid me to sleep in their hotel room after the party. I told her I was too tired for anything to happen that night, so she asked me to sleep with Jenny the next morning when we woke up. I don't know where Megan was staying. When I got there, Jenny was already asleep, so I climbed into bed and passed out. The next morning, she woke up before I did. She ran to the bathroom and started throwing up. I thought it was from a hangover, but then I heard crying. I went to the door, and she was curled up in a ball on the bathroom floor. It scared the hell out of me. I tried to get her out of there, but she wouldn't move from her spot. After about half an hour, I managed to coax her back to bed. I got her some coffee, and she finally started talking to me. It was awful. She would talk for a minute and then start crying hysterically. She talked about you and your daughter and how wonderful her life had been. She was afraid she had ruined everything and felt terribly guilty. I stayed with her until it was time for her to leave for the airport. The whole time she was berating herself for what had happened and saying that you could never forgive her. Just before she left, I told her that she shouldn't tell you. I said that if it was my wife, I didn't want to know. If she really didn't want it to happen, then instead of ruining everyone's life, she should try to make it up to you. It seems like it helped her at least pull herself together to get to the airport. I felt so bad about everything that had happened that I called Monday and quit. When I took the job, it seemed so perfect, getting paid to have fun. When I saw what she was going through on Sunday, I wondered how many other marriages had broken up because of these parties. I had already gotten a good offer at the firm, but kept putting off starting work. After spending Sunday with Jenny, I realized it was time to move on. That's all I know. If you want to take my word for it, don't watch the tape. It'll be a hell of a nuisance to see it like that. If you watch it, hopefully it will help you realize that she was set up by Megan. All I can say is I'm sorry Jake and I helped. I think you're crazy not to give her another chance. She told me that she didn't mean for any of this to happen and she wanted it all back. She had no reason to lie to me, so I believe her. When he finished, I tried to figure out how I should feel. Should I say thank you to the man who entertained my wife? Now that I knew more about what had happened, did it really matter? Jenny was still cheating on me, but at least now I knew it was a one-time thing and not something she was looking for. Drunk or not, she had agreed to it and then compounded her betrayal by repeating it the next night. David's description of her guilt made me feel more sympathy for her, but I couldn't get the image of the party out of my head. Now the other question became, should I watch the tape to confirm his version of events? Surely it would turn out to be worse than the one I'd seen at the party, and what would that change? Honestly, I didn't know if I could handle seeing her like that. I wondered exactly how I deserved it. Since everything was done on the first day, I caught an earlier flight. I got back into town very late, so I left Danielle with Jenny and got some sleep. In the morning, I called Brian. I told him some of the details and asked for a meeting. He said he would have some time this afternoon and I could stop by his place. And that's okay, now that you know some of the details, you need to talk to your wife about it. I noticed that Brian often referred to Jenny as my wife, or some other affectionate word rather than just saying her name. There was probably some special reason for this, but I didn't understand it. Now that some of the gaps have been filled in, I think I'm ready to talk to her. However, the problems still remain. How will I know she's being honest, even if I want to believe her? If it turns out that everything happened the way David explained, then she certainly deserves more sympathy than I gave her. But that doesn't excuse what she did. She was still cheating on me, and I doubt she'd have much sympathy if I got drunk and slept with her. And then there's the video. Should I watch it? These are all very important questions, John. Unfortunately, I can't answer any of them. All I'm urging you to do is take charge of your life. And it's not because I think you'll be better off if you do things my way. I let you talk for 3 weeks to understand your feelings about right and wrong. It's you struggling with your beliefs that makes you so unhappy. You can't let Jenny go because you still love her, but you feel she should be punished for what she did. You have to decide what you can live with and what you are willing to give up. It's not easy, but that's life. I threw him a disappointed look. Thank you, but that didn't help at all. John, all I can tell you is that if you can make a decision without looking at the video, don't watch it. There will be more pain along the way and it will make your situation even more difficult. If you need to watch the video to see for yourself how she behaved, then watch it. In my opinion, if you need to watch it to make a decision, you've pretty much made it. I thanked him and took Danielle away. I spoke to Jenny briefly but tried not to sound suspicious. I mentioned Brian's sessions and asked if she wanted to come. She enthusiastically agreed, making me a little nervous about what she was expecting. I tried to be more accommodating and not give her any reason to get her hopes up. I just wanted things to be resolved so I could move on. I didn't look at the tape until just before the session. It was locked in my desk where Danny couldn't accidentally see it. That night, right after dinner, I decided I had to watch it. I asked Steve and Sharon to watch Danielle for the night. Just in case I couldn't handle seeing her, I didn't want her anywhere near me. For an entire hour, I sat at home and just stared at the tape on the coffee table in the living room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and put it into the VCR. Megan, Jenny, David, and another woman were already in the room talking. Jake must have distracted them while David was pointing the camera at something. Maybe it was in a bag to record inconspicuously. They danced together and talked about how much fun they had at the club. While Jake and David were talking at the other end of the room, Jenny pulled Megan aside. It just so happened that she was right next to the camera. Although I couldn't see them, the conversation was easy to hear. Jenny was already slurring her words. Megan, I want to do this for you, but having two guys in my room is something John would be pissed off about. I can only help you up to a certain point and then I have to leave. I'll rent another room for the night and you can have all the fun you want, okay? Don't worry, Jen. Just help me tease them a little so I can get them to the point I want them. You can make your excuses and leave, and I'll get a night I'll never forget. When I danced with Jake, I realized he was hung like a horse. This is going to be amazing. Just trust me. I won't let them try anything with you, and when I'm sure they're ready, I'll let you know it's time to leave. Yeah. Megan stepped to the other end of the room and turned on the boombox. Club music started playing and the girls started dancing with both guys. They must have continued where they left off in the club because they were already dancing more than a married woman should. They touched each other as they moved from one song to the next, though I noticed that David never once tried to touch anywhere that might have alerted Jenny that he was planning something more than just dancing. The guys brought them drinks, and for a few minutes everyone sat around. They danced a few more songs, had a few more drinks, and then Megan said she had an idea for a party game. Details are superfluous. Later, I hit the eject button on the remote and pulled the tape out of the VCR. Blacking out, I watched as it flew out of my hands and shattered into a dozen pieces against the brick wall next to the fireplace. I threw the shards into the fire and ran out of the house, trying to think of any way to keep from making things worse. End of part 1. Part 2 may be coming out in 10 hours. Write in the comments if you're waiting for it. Also, give a like under this video and subscribe to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video.